Welcome to a special haunted edition of the Phoenix 50 Info Show. Join us as we explore the old City Hall jail, where legends long forgotten still linger behind bars in these abandoned cells. Enter at your own risk.
Hello and welcome to the Phoenix 50 Info Show. My name is Lieutenant Vince Lewis, here today as always with my...
I think I'm co-host now, boss. Let's upgrade to co-host. I'm not going away anytime soon.
Sergeant Rob Scherer is a Public Information Sergeant in the Public Affairs Bureau alongside me. We're coming to you from downtown Phoenix, but somewhere different, somewhere special. You're probably hearing this reverb that we're coming to you from not the Public Affairs Bureau studios, but the old jail in downtown Phoenix, which is above our Phoenix Police Museum and the Public Professional Standards Bureau, which is our internal affairs here in downtown Phoenix. But with us, joining us again, thank you for being here, Sarge, is our Phoenix Police historian and former Public Information Sergeant, Vinnie Cole. Welcome,
yes, sir.
Vinnie.
Thank you for having me again.
Absolutely.
Yes, it's great to have him back. He even wore the PAB pin.
Right,
boss.
got to remember where I came from.
Absolutely.
The unit designator pin, so we're all part of the same...
all same family today.
Yeah, good. So, yeah, all right. Well, speaking of traditions, I want to talk about where we are. Vinnie, go ahead and give us an idea of the significance of not only where we are, but kind of what this was used for.
Okay, so this originally the Phoenix City Hall kind of municipal building was at 125 East Washington. And there was a decision made that they needed to have kind of a municipal square. So what exists in a lot of small towns, the courthouse and things all together. So this idea was conceived between Maricopa County and then the city of Phoenix to build a building that would house both the Maricopa County Courthouse and the city of Phoenix City Hall. Construction lasted from 1928 with occupancy of everybody coming in here in 1929. In the summer of 1929. So the building that we're in now functioned as City Hall and eventually encompassed the police department. It was a shared building at one time. Where we're at now, obviously, was our jail. And when a person was arrested, they were brought up. We passed a room on our way in that was a tiny little section that kind of functioned as R&I, fingerprinting and picture taking, which blows my mind now considering how big our facilities are compared to then. If a person had committed a misdemeanor, they were being held for a misdemeanor crime, they were brought to this side of the jail. Things like trespassing, shoplifting, minor thefts, drunken disorderly, which obviously isn't in the codes anymore, but and a few others. And if they were brought in here for felonies, they were brought over to the Maricopa County side, which is adjacent to us, and that's where they would be held.
Rob, describe the room around. Use present-day terms, TV shows, analogies that you can think of to give our audience a real idea of where we are. Describe this room.
I mean, spooky was mentioned. It's kind of eerie. It reminds me, honestly, I got lucky enough. I'm a sports nut. You're a historian. I was lucky enough to go to Fenway Park, and it has that weird paint ripping off, kind of peeling off the walls, yet it's been painted, it looks about 420 times. I mean, it's an eerie, kind of tight-fitting, not well lit, not well ventilated in any way, shape, or form, as you can tell by the sweat that's coming off me for those of you watching. But yeah, it's an interesting feel. It's very cold and dark, but still musky and hot.
So we've got concrete floors, we've got metal benches, we've got metal bars. This is giving me like a Walking Dead kind of Alcatraz feel, right?
Right, yeah. And when you said that it looks like it'd been painted over 400 times, you're right. And obviously, if you're only listening and not watching, the bolts that are affixed are bubbles of paint now because trustees would basically paint this building this section of the building multiple times. Who knows how many times a year, but they would just paint and paint and paint. And it's very archaic in the sense of what we're used to in our careers. The jails have made vast evolutions since this. I mean, this is an early 20th century jail as a comparison to what they build now. The bars and things like that, very reminiscent of an old movie set rather than a jail.
So it's very confined, it's a constricted space. So. And it's no longer functioning as a jail. It's been basically well, can we say it's been preserved? I know it's been locked up and the access has been severely restricted. Nobody comes up here, is that right?
Right. Well, and by virtue of that, it's kind of inadvertently preserved it. Certain parts of the jail has had parts removed, so there's things missing as we walk around. This wouldn't safely contain anyone anymore, but it's largely untouched. There's still dust everywhere. I doubt any of the plumbing functions, but you can see where there were beds and toilets and tables in like this day room area we're in.
So we've got about a dozen cells that are on this floor that we're in, and it's just one wall of cells with the rolling gates that you would hear slide and slam shut.
Right.
Inside each one of these cells, a concrete floor, like we said, toilet, bench, probably not much more.
Right, yeah, and again, this is a jail, so people were here temporarily. And in fact, some people had taken up residence here so often, they began using it as their mailing address. And this was 17 South 2nd Avenue back in the day. But, and they would also, the detectives would use some of the inmates we had here for photo lineups. And downstairs in the Detective Bureau, there's several famous Phoenix PD photo lineups that were done. True photo lineups where they would line inmates up and somebody would pick them out. And oftentimes those were trustees. Sometimes they were City of Phoenix employees that worked here that they would stand in a lineup. So.
Imagine getting scooped up for that.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Hey, you as a historian, and not to get crazy personal, but you as a historian, access has been kind of denied up here, regularly to a degree. What's it like for you to be in a building like this where you remember pictures and you're like, oh, that's where that picture was at, or oh, that's what this is. What's it like for you personally to be in a place like this?
It's really cool to come back and see it untouched because so much of history is done through pictures, sketches, and maps. To be able to walk in, and I had commented this several times, this place still smells like a jail to me.
Yeah.
And it's funny because it's a completely immersive experience, and it's a largely, for all intents and purposes, it's an abandoned section of this building. And it's just a snippet in time that you can kind of come back and, people who have gone before us on this job have worked here, they've been assigned here, and it's amazing to me that this is all still here and is all still something we can experience.
So significance of this building and this particular jail and the room that you were talking about before having to do with Phoenix police history and Phoenix history, because we're all familiar, at least in the law enforcement community, with Arizona Arrest Miranda, right?
Right.
So, and that was an actual person, Ernesto Miranda, who was arrested here by a Phoenix police detective and brought to this facility. Is that correct?
Right. So he would have been brought here for the picture taking and fingerprinting. He would have been housed on the felony side, but Miranda kind of had several run-ins with the law, so it's entirely possible at one point he was housed here. But we also had a couple other famous people that were incarcerated in this side of the jail. Ira Hayes. Ira Hayes is one of the original flag raisers from the Battle of Iwo Jima. He's in the back. He had spent some time here. The Winnie Ruth Judd trial was held right next door. Same thing with the Miranda trial, it was held next door. So this place has a lot of history apart from it just functioning as an old jail.
But you've talked to the detectives and the people, because there's offices, Phoenix Police offices like our Internal Affairs, the Phoenix Police Museum. You've talked to people who work in this building and they've shared some stories with you that might raise the hair on the back of your neck.
Right, well, and people always say if a building's old, it's haunted. That's not always necessarily true. But when you have a jail, there's a lot of things that happen that go with people in custody, people who have been picked up for violent things. I had spoke to somebody who had worked, one of our employees here, who said that on the first floor in the old Detective Bureau, we had an employee who was shot and killed in here in the 40s, downstairs. And this employee was walking in late at night. She worked for Internal Affairs, so it was probably some sort of call out, and looked to her left and saw somebody that was a slim, either white or Hispanic male, and when she went past, that person was gone. And she had told me about it, and I happened to have a picture of said person, and her eyes lit up and said, that's the guy. So ironically, the place where she saw him is about where he probably would have died.
So me as the house cynic, what I hear is late call out, probably been exhausted, tired, happened to maybe see something and then looked at a picture and said that was probably it. What stories do you have any personal stories that could maybe turn me into one that might believe in this this ghostly presence?
I do. So PMH, which Phoenix Memorial Hospital at 7th Avenue and Buckeye, now functions as our urgent psychiatric care. And we had a call one night of a gentleman who needed to go there, and it was unremarkable. Picked him up, took him there. But it was summer, and I had been pounding water, so I needed to use the restroom. So I asked one of the nurses, "Can I use your restroom?" And she said, "Sure, no problem." Now, to wind it back a little bit, PMH kind of functioned as county hospital, especially in the 60s, 70s, you know, until St. Joe's became a little more prevalent. And they were around then, but, you know, PMH was kind of our county hospital. And the first floor of where I was at encompassed the old surgery center. So she said, "Hey, use the employee restroom." And I opened the door and the lights were off, and I flipped them on, and in front of me was like a set of lockers, just like you would see in any employee restroom / locker room. And to my right, there was a shower. It was like 2 shower stalls, and I saw somebody standing there in a hospital gown. And you know the old style hospital gowns that are like the little square patterns? And it did, to the point where I ran to where I saw it, because again, as I'm looking at it, it looks like there's a deep kind of entryway to the shower. And I ran there, and there was a wall facing me. There was nobody there, and I wasn't tired. I was certainly awake after that.
Right.
But that gave me the heebie-jeebies. And as I left, I started to think, this is the area of where the old surgery center was, and so that was my experience.
Nothing. So you weren't thinking that going in. You weren't predisposed to. I'm going to see something.
I just had to use the restroom.
So I got a story I'd tell you real quick. This is one of my father's friends. So my dad did 37 years with Phoenix, and he's got some friends and some stories and things. This one in particular was there is a restaurant not far from where we're at, across from a major park in the city. And this restaurant is built into an old house that it's the only thing on the property, and there's stories to go along with that. But there was a late night call, thought to be a burglary, thought to be somebody inside that structure. This officer, Phoenix police officer, tells the story through third parties or whatever. It was passed down to me that he goes into this house, makes his way into the basement of this building, completely dark, just his flashlight. He's alone on the call, searching through, not necessarily knowing the history of the significance of this building, doesn't expect to see or find anything. And as he's searching with his flashlight across this dark, empty basement, a female screamed right in his ear. He almost drops the flashlight, runs right outside the front door, makes the whole building clear, and gets out of there with his life. So that's the story as it was passed to me. Not sure how that relates. Or do you guys have any other experiences?
I don't.
Nothing
as the
from,
house cynic, I don't. Maybe
So,
I
what about the calls? Like, so I've been to a call at a hotel not far from here, also close to downtown, where somebody was seen on the roof. They were cleaning up after a party, rooftop party, whatever. They were the last one to leave, and they said, "Hey, you need to get security up here. There's somebody sitting on the roof over behind the air conditioning unit because there's a pair of boots sticking out." And this person who waits for security to get up there, we go up there, we check, and there's nobody there. And this particular hotel, I don't know if you know the one I'm talking about.
I think I do.
All right, yeah. It's been stories that date back. In fact, they have a little display in their lobby to talk about the ghosts in that hotel. Right?
Yes, they do. And they definitely, they used to have tours and stuff through not too far from that. You know, downtown Phoenix has a lot of historic properties that are residential homes, particularly west of 7th Avenue and east of 7th Street. You have the old Garfield neighborhood. All those, a lot of them are very, very historic, and some of them are even pre-statehood homes. We had a call one night in the middle of the night of a burglary, and got there, and it was a young lady who was she was studying. She was a student, and she went up to get some water, wasn't drinking. She was adamant about that.
actual water.
And she saw somebody sitting in her living room, freaked out, called the police, as anybody would. So we got there, checked the house, checked the exterior. The windows were painted shut. I remember seeing that. So afterwards, I had asked her what he was wearing, and she described kind of like a 3-piece suit and a rolled fedora, which I in my own mind thought she's talking about a derby hat, which they're not very popular anymore. Needless to say, nobody was found in the area, so I don't know what she saw, but we were able to calm her fears a little bit.
Do you guys have any other stories that you want to share, or you want to talk about where we're at?
Yeah, there's a couple of things I wanted to show with that little room where the fingerprinting and the photo taking was done, and then just around the corner, there's kind of like an open area that was kind of the drunk tank. For lack of
Tell
a
me about
better
that
term.
before we head over. What are we going to see when we get there?
You'll see a large, so you'll see it, you won't see as many cells. It's basically a large open area with toilets out in the open, and that was used as kind of a mass holding area, particularly for people who are here for drunk and disorderly.
Okay, and then the fingerprint area?
The fingerprint, it's gutted now, but you can kind of see that it's a tiny little room, and they did fingerprints in there, and then they took the famous mug shots, and the Miranda mug shot was snapped in there. The other thing that this jail has that's a feature that is still found in jails is there's a run that goes behind the cells. And the purpose of that, it's tight, it's tiny, but the purpose of that is if they're searching for contraband, they can go in there and turn off all the water to each one of these cells. So if inmates have something like drugs or any other prohibited item, they can't flush it before the search is done. So those are two things, and that's kind of, in my opinion, I thought that was a contemporary feature of jails here, it seems. It could be used for plumbing and maintenance, but that's what it's been used for in the past.
Perfect. Want to run this way, boss?
Yeah, let's go.
Let's check it out. Gentlemen? All right, Vinny, in another section of the jail, I see some bars, kind of an open area. What exactly, what was this used for? What was done here?
This was kind of the administrative section of the jail. This is where the officers who worked here and the sergeant would have been, the office back there. But originally, these two bars are what, when a person was brought in that was in custody, they held onto these bars and a pat down and a search was done, and any property and anything they had was taken out. There used to be a desk right here. So this was the booking desk in its truest terms, and they would complete the paperwork and go from there.
Awesome. It's still kind of, as law enforcement, we see some of these things and we can see how it might have functioned a much smaller scale, but awesome to be here, knowing kind of what transpired, over the years in a place like this.
Right, and the thousands of people that were probably booked in this area and then determined to which side of the tank, if they were going to go to the felony side or they were going to go here, and then processed from here.
Awesome. Head to the drunk tank. See that
Sure.
next?
Yep.
Awesome. Cool.
The area we're walking in now would have been the run, so the officers would have walked down these paths to make sure that the inmates were safe, and also that there was nothing going on like fighting or use of illicit drugs that happened to get in here. So
you and I could barely fit down this run.
Right, yeah, it's a tight...
And officers would bring prisoners through here?
No, officers themselves would walk through here to monitor the prisoner housing areas.
Okay. That's why the bars are on our right.
Right, yep, so you would walk, and the idea is you can also see into each individual cell and then hopefully get eyes on any inmate that are here.
And there's a drain gutter system below, probably just to hose the place out, keep it clean.
Right. And this area we're going to now is kind of the mass housing area. You'll notice once we get in that there are there's no cells in here. Here is where people, like for drunk and disorderly, would find themselves. There's very little privacy. There's, the restrooms are kind of out in the open. It's important to note too that this part of the jail it's been modified. So the bars would have been on the other side as well. But this is one of the parts of the jail that, like I said, had been modified.
So not necessarily a criminal, but definitely needed a place to get off the street so they could sober up, spend some time, and that's what this place was used for.
Right, and it was a criminal charge in the day,
That's right.
The drunk and disorderly. So they were here whether they wanted to be or not, but it prevented them from being exposed to the sun in July or passing out in the middle of the street. So this is where a lot of them went, and of course now LARC has replaced that and has given people options apart from coming to a place like this.
So yeah, and community bridges.
Right, and community bridges.
Excellent. Well, that's all we have for you guys. Thank you for joining us. Remember to like and subscribe to us and turn on your notifications so you know when we put out more videos like this. I want to thank my co-host, Sergeant Robert Scherer.
Pleasure, boss.
And I want to thank Sergeant Vincent Cole for joining us.
Thanks, LT.
All right, and remember guys, be safe out there. Hey, Phil, what are you doing here?
Hey, LT, sorry, I know you asked me about this a while ago, but I found about Sergeant Vinnie Cole. He actually retired back in 1964. Unfortunately, he did pass away in 1967.